Welcome everybody to this edition of Attention Talk Video. I'm your host, ADHD and attention coach, Jeff Copper. Today I'm here to talk about what I call the anatomy of a strength. When I got into coaching many years ago, I got kind of confused by all these words: skills, knowledge, experience, talents, gifts, passions, modalities. Just kind of drove me crazy. And I'm a very logical person, and I need a context, a way to look at these things to really make a lot of sense. And what I'm sharing with you today is a lens that I use, and when I'm looking at what a strength is, and I break it down into some components, and I'll talk to you a little bit about how I look at it, how career counselors look at it, at least my belief system around it. And my hope is that this will help you gain some understanding of a strength, maybe a context, and kind of help you break things down and understand what's kind of going on. So first of all, this is actually my formula. This is kind of my definition. So we're going to bend over here with the strength. And a strength is actually equal to four major components. The first one is things that can be transferred from one person to a next. The second is the ability to practice. The third is a choice. And the last one is kind of what you're born with. So let's kind of go through that again. A strength is equal. The first area is skills, knowledge, and experience. In my opinion, this is what career counselors deal with. Do you have the skill to chop up fruit, onions, kind of whatever? Do you have the knowledge? Have you read a cookbook? And do you have the experience cooking? These are things that you can go learn. They can be transferred from one person to another. These are things that, again, I want to emphasize you can go get. When you're writing a resume or you go to a career counselor, they're interested in where did you go to school, what your experience, and what skills that you have. Now, I want to be clear. Just because you have skills, knowledge, experience doesn't mean that you're any good at it. It just means that you're able to do that. The second one is the ability, is facilitators, and this is the ability to practice. Experiential knowledge, that might be a coach who can help show you and refine some of these things, and resources. These would be the things that you need in order to practice. So if we're sticking with the food analogy, you'd actually have to have key ingredients, access to ingredients, the money for those ingredients, pots and pans, utensils, different types of tools that you would need in order to practice these types of things. So these are facilitators. These are things that help you kind of practice. The next one is choice. Do you choose to pay attention to it or not? If you choose not to pay attention to cooking, then you're never going to have a strength with regard to that. If you do pay attention to it, that's important. Also, if you have a belief system, that can get in the way. If a woman believes that her place is in the home, she's clearly never going to be able to have her strength as a businesswoman manifest. So you actually have to believe it, and you actually have to pay attention to it. This last box is actually where, as a attention coach, I really spend all my time. These are things that you're born with, what I call modalities, passions, and talents. Modality is something that, it's like a style, if you will. The best way to describe it is, we talk about learning modalities. We all learn auditorily, we all learn visually, tactilely, that's touching, kinesthetically is where you're moving, socially. There's a whole bunch of them. The thing about it is we all use all of them, and we know the more we use when we're learning, the better we're learning. But I find that we tend to have more dominant modalities. I learn a lot when I talk. If I say I'm a verbal processor, or my dominant learning modality is more verbal, it doesn't mean that I'm better than another person who does it. It just means that's my style, that's my preference. Another person might be more visual. And as a coach, I spend a lot of time trying to understand how people learn. By the way, that's an organizational function. It gives me a lot of insight into what to look for in terms of organizational systems and external worlds. We tend to talk about things in terms of learning modalities, but I actually kind of go past that, and that could be, how do you create content? Some people start with a white sheet of paper. Some people are more kind of collage type. Some take templates and edit them, etc. Also, do you work alone, in small groups, larger groups? We all do all of these, but do you have one or two that are more dominant? And so I like to work with people to understand how they work. That's how they process some information. And again, it doesn't mean how I process is any better than anybody else. It's just my style. Then there's passions. And I simplify this in the ADD world. It's your dopamine addiction. It's those things that you can always pay attention to. It's your passion. It's kind of what you gravitate to. It's excitement. It what ignites your brain, etc. And people with ADD, we talk about it as being a self-regulation issue. And I find that many times their passions are things that their issues not paying attention to. It's actually stopping. And the last one is a talent. And I think a talent is really interesting to me because I think all too often people try to label a talent. What I've learned about talents is, number one, is what's different from a talent and a modality is a talent is something that you don't necessarily have to use. Like, for example, to make this real tangible, as an athlete, you might have fast twitch muscle fibers, which makes you a good sprinter. You don't necessarily have to run or have to swim or have to do those in everyday life. So talents are interesting because they're not something that you have to do. We all have to learn, okay? But when it comes to a talent, it's sometimes things that you don't necessarily have to do. That's number one. Number two is they're not always easily recognizable. In the world, a lot of people talk about gifts and talents, but because they're so difficult, they go right back and they start talking about skills, knowledge, and experience. And to me, it's not. I know from athletics is that you can have fast twitch muscle fibers, which is why maybe Carl Lewis was born to run fast. That's a difference. He's got it. It's innate. That's what enables him to excel at a higher level. Over the years, I found other people's talents are a little bit more challenging, like the ability to see patterns in the world. It's hard to describe that. I'm an attention coach, and I like to pay attention to attention, and attention's invisible, it's an intangible, and actually this was all brought about by how I pay attention to the world. The other thing about talents is they're typically not something that you can use a word. I think there's 500,000 words in the English language, and there's billions of people. I think there's billions of talents. So a talent is also often very, very, very descriptive. And so at the end of the day, it's very difficult to actually articulate with specificity exactly what a talent is. We certainly can see when it manifests, but often we say it manifests, we talk to that as a strength. But to me, it's something that you're born with, and it's something that enables you to perform at a higher level. Another problem with talents is people have a tendency to want to associate this with money, and it's not, unfortunately. You can have a talent in certain areas, and it can make you very, very wealthy. In other areas, you can have a talent, and you're going to have a hard time really making a go at it just because of the way our economy works. As a coach, I focus solely on this area to try to help a person understand how they work, what they're passionate about, and what they're really good at. Which, by the way, if you're really talented at something and you don't have the passion for it, it's never going to manifest over here as a strength. You got to have the interest and the passion and the talent and the modalities in order for that to really manifest across the board. For me, what I focus again on what you're born with, and if we can understand this, then you can pay attention to it. We can get you the skills, knowledge, experience, and you can practice it, and it can manifest as a strength. So again, this is really just a lens that I've used over the years, and it's what I call my anatomy of strength. And I use this to kind of really put things into context, to pay attention to it and break it down. And really, I find that career counselors spend most of their time in this area. As a coach, I spend my time in this area over here. And by the way, this is my most favorite thing to coach. It's the hardest thing to figure out, but it's a real challenge. I have a lot of fun with it. I really like to attack this. Because it's so hard, a lot of people revert back to over here. So, and then I hope that you've gained some insight from this. It took me a while to put this thing together where it made some sense, and it might not make some sense to you, or maybe you'd like to add something to it, but it really kind of puts things into context so that you can begin to focus on it. Again, I'm Jeff Copper. I'm an ADHD and attention coach. You can learn more about me at my website at digcoaching.com. This is Attention Talk Video, and we'd love it if you subscribe. The subscribe button is right down below here. And please leave a comment. I'm really interested. Did this help? Does this make some sense? Did you find value from it? Is there something that you would add to it? Anyway, there you have it. Hope you've enjoyed this edition of Attention Talk Video. Take care.